Hi, it's Jamie, and real quick before today's show, can you hit the follow button? Just asking because we may have just come up in a search you did for info about today's topic. Well, we do this 5 days a week, and in the next little bit, we'll be hitting our Canadian election and U.S. politics news pretty hard. So please follow us. It helps us a lot, and you also won't miss anything. Okay, thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Jamie Poisson. On Monday night at President Donald Trump's inauguration rally, Elon Musk thanked the crowd.
You know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, important. Some are not. But this one, this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
He then thumped his right hand on the left side of his chest and thrust it into the air in a straight line. Then he turned around and made the gesture again. The backlash online was immediate. Claire Aubwin, a historian specializing in Nazism in the U.S., said that the gesture was clearly a Nazi salute, or a Sieg Heil. My professional opinion is that you're all right. You should believe your eyes, she said. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, a history professor at New York University, posted, "Historian of fascism here. It was a Nazi salute and a very belligerent one, too." But the Anti-Defamation League, or ADL for short, an organization that was founded to combat anti-Semitism, disagreed. It posted on X, "It seems that Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm, not a Nazi salute. But again, we appreciate that people are on edge. In this moment, all sides should give one another a bit of grace, perhaps even the benefit of the doubt, and take a breath. This is a new beginning. Let's hope for healing and work toward unity in the months and years ahead." Musk responded, "Thanks, guys," with a laugh-crying emoji. On X, he also posted, "Frankly, they need better dirty tricks. The everyone is Hitler attack is so tired." The ADL is well known for its advocacy, not only around anti-Semitism, but also around civil rights issues. Their work often gets referenced by government agencies, corporations, and the media. Its defense of Musk would have been nearly unthinkable even a year and a half ago, when Musk threatened to sue the group for defamation. Mari Cohen has been covering this evolving relationship between Musk and the ADL for Jewish Currents. She's here to talk about that and how it fits into ongoing criticisms the organization is facing. Hi, Mari. Thank you so much for coming on to Front Burner.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's start with Elon Musk here. As I mentioned in the intro, he's essentially said that the everyone is Hitler attack is tired. But tell me a bit about how much traction his gestures from earlier in the week are getting online. Who have we seen respond to what he did with, I don't know, let's say enthusiasm?
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever Elon Musk intended with his gesture, it's obvious that certain members of the far right who have been known to express, neo-Nazi views or affiliate with white supremacism and anti-Semitism have obviously been very happy to see what Musk did. So there was a helpful roundup from Rolling Stone about how some of these far-right figures have responded. For example, like Andrew Torba, founder of the Christian nationalist social media platform Gab, shared the clip and said, "Incredible things are happening already, LMAO." You've got this Christopher Paulhaus, leader of neo-Nazi group Blood Tribe, posted the clip on Telegram and said, "I don't care if this was a mistake. I'm going to enjoy the tears over it." So there's already like a roundup of figures who are very appreciative of what Musk did.
Yeah, let me add just two to that pot. White nationalist streamer Nick Fuentes said that the move was a, quote, straight up Sieg Heil, like loving Hitler energy.
It wasn't even like a subtle, like a wave, like one of these, like a Laura Ingraham. Remember when Laura Ingraham did that? That was a straight up like Sieg Heil, like loving Hitler energy. that was like a straight up with intensity Roman salute.
And then Andrew Tate, I saw last night, talked about bringing back the Nazi salute.
You know, I'm kind of thinking we should bring the Nazi salute back, because the people we've been arguing with for the last 4 years have no interest in objective truth. Hail SpaceX!
There's some context here to get into with you. Can you tell me more about how Musk has been criticized for essentially opening the floodgates of hate speech, and in particular, anti-Semitic speech in recent years following his purchase of Twitter? And maybe if you could give me some examples there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big reasons that Musk wanted to take over Twitter in the first place in 2022, and part of the reason that he started his bid, was that he claimed that Twitter was clamping down on free speech unfairly. And he believed that Twitter's moderation policies, which often did involve kind of banning any kind of, super hateful, white supremacist, neo-Nazi content.
Tonight, a new phase of fallout in the stunning, incendiary wake of Kanye West's actions. The artist, now simply known as Ye, once again banned from Twitter after another anti-Semitic post. This time, a now deleted image of a Star of David enveloping a swastika.
He, believed that this was stifling conservative speech. And when he took over Twitter in fall 2022, he, immediately started relaxing some of those standards. And the other thing he allowed was that anybody could become a blue check kind of verified account as long as they paid for it. And so anybody could pay for this account and then have their replies prioritized and boosted, which meant that people promoting often this kind of harassment were able to get verified and then have their content like boosted and prioritized. And you can just see that, like, anyone who uses the site now, I think it's pretty easy to see that happening, which is that, like, you'll go to a tweet and in the replies, there'll be a bunch of people with blue checks. And often some of them will be saying nasty stuff about minorities or about Jews or about women. And that stuff is all over the platform. And this was something that a lot of groups started tracking pretty quickly. After Musk's takeover in 2023, I think there was a report by Media Matters saying that, X had been running its ads for major companies right next to the neo-Nazi posts, which is something that actually really upset a lot of the major companies and led some of them to pull advertising. And then also the ADL itself actually was tracking some of this stuff because they have a technology and society division that kind of reviews content on social media platforms. And I think they tracked like a 60% increase in anti-Semitic content just a few months after Musk's takeover.
Right. I remember some of the criticisms at the time. There were like these accounts that would just broadcast Hitler's speeches and praise like his genocidal regime. So talk to me a bit more about what the ADL did here, right? So they're tracking this, they see this increase, and in November 2022, the ADL, along with a number of nonprofits, they start an advertising boycott. And then about a year and a half later, Musk actually threatened to sue them, right? And so what was the accusation at the time? How did the ADL respond? How did that all shake out?
Yeah. So basically, what happened was, the ADL, with a coalition of other, I think, like kind of civil rights or minority groups, started the boycott campaign called Stop Hate for Profit, where they said they wouldn't advertise on X. And I believe they were trying to encourage, businesses and corporations not to advertise. Although it should be said that many of these businesses and corporations were stopping advertising of their own accord because they didn't like having their posts next to neo-Nazi posts. And Musk was upset about this. So I think, in fall 2023, I think this is like September 2023, maybe, he's tweeted about it. And he tweeted, "Since the acquisition, the ADL has been trying to kill this platform by falsely accusing it and me of being anti-Semitic, to clear our platform's name on the matter of anti-Semitism. It looks like we have no choice but to file a defamation lawsuit against the Anti-Defamation League. Oh, the irony." So that was kind of, he's like, they're defaming me by saying that I'm anti-Semitic. And so I need to sue them. And he starts kind of like just, I think, on Twitter/X at the time, he starts supporting this online campaign of people complaining about the ADL. That's basically complaining that the ADL strangles hate speech and that they support civil rights and diversity and social justice efforts. And so the ADL needs to be banned. And it really kind of the implication here was that the ADL had been the sort of instrumental organizer in this advertising boycott, and that it was sort of behind any advertising revenue that Twitter was losing.
And then they patch it up, right? The ADL and Elon Musk. And tell me how that even happens.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, in response, the ADL had actually resumed advertising on X at this point. It had like some of its own advertising for its own anti-Semitism programming. And then they stopped advertising again after Musk was attacking them. And then a month later, they actually started again. So already the ADL was like not taking a super confrontational approach. But the way that things really get patched up has to do with Israel. And basically what happened was, soon after this whole dispute, October 7th, 2023 happens, Hamas attacks on Israel, and then Israel immediately starts with this onslaught on Gaza, which quickly, as the casualties pile up, many people start calling it a genocide. There's a kind of eruption of protests and student movements against Israel, people calling for a ceasefire. The ADL comes out very strong, criticizing those movements, criticizing people who are opposing Israel's war as anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of debate over like certain phrases and as they're used in the student movement. One of those phrases is "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." The ADL has been against that for a long time and called it anti-Semitic. And I think in November 2023, Elon Musk made a tweet that was basically like, we're going to ban "from the river to the sea," and the term decolonization, because a lot of people use this kind of colonial or decolonial analysis of Israel's position with respect to Palestinians. He said that they're going to ban those phrases. Basically, he said that they were going to ban users who use them
Mm-hmm.
or suspend them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've done this. I don't think Musk followed through on that. It didn't seem like that happened. But he said they were going to, and Greenblatt was happy. He kind of responded to it and said Elon Musk is being a leader in the fight against hate. And that was kind of their rapprochement.
And when you say Greenblatt, this is the CEO of the ADL. And just tell me a little bit more about him and why he is at the heart of the recent criticisms that the league has been facing.
So Jonathan Greenblatt is the CEO of the ADL. He's been in that position, I believe, since 2015. When he came on, he was considered to be kind of like a sort of young, new, progressive guy bringing new energy to the ADL. He didn't have a ton of experience. Like one of his big areas of expertise, like things that he did before coming to the ADL was he was involved in an effort to sell socially responsible water. But he also had briefly served as an Obama staffer. So people kind of associated him with Obama politics in the Obama administration. But over time, Greenblatt really has distinguished himself. He's basically the face of the ADL everywhere. He's making his own tweets. He's going on TV, on CNN, on MSNBC to talk about the ADL's perspective. And he really has distinguished himself for starting a new policy where the ADL is going to target anti-Zionist politics as anti-Semitism. And much of what he's doing in these public appearances and on Twitter is really calling out people that he perceives as, criticizing or protesting Israel.
I'll tell you, as I think about corporations, first I'll just mention universities, because I think we saw at Harvard the total, utter failure of leadership for days after the massacre. And the students who came out with this bizarre, bewildering piece. Yale University, the secretary and dean of academic life, put out a piece on the 9th, which is truly ghastly. In the passive voice, we deplore the loss of life on all sides. This was a massacre of civilians. And if Yale University, like Harvard, like so many others, can't speak clearly when they have in the past about, and appropriately, by the way, about Black Lives Matter and stopping Asian hate and climate and so many other issues.
And so he's really distinguished himself in that way. And it's quite different than what people originally thought that he was going to do at the organization.
And just to be really clear here, The main criticism here is that he's using his voice in the organization to equate anti-Semitism with anti-Israel sentiment, right? And
Yeah.
as you
Yes.
explained, there's a lot of controversy over that. It just maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that, this idea of whether or not anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a lot of the debates over Israel and Palestine, in the US and Canada and many other places today really comes down to this question. And, basically the argument that groups like the ADL make is that they say that that it's okay to criticize Israel and the Israeli government, but it's just not okay to criticize Israel's status as a Jewish state. But like in practice, even a lot of people who criticize the Israeli government come under scrutiny from groups like the ADL. But basically, their argument is that, Israel is a representation of self-determination for Jews. It's Jewish nationalism. It's a place where a lot of Jews live. And so to call out Israel or to oppose the idea of a Jewish state in the land is to basically single out Jews as not being deserving of a state. Now, what a lot of other people say, including a lot of progressive Jewish groups, which are growing in number, as well as, Palestinian groups, other groups on the left, is that, well, at the end of the day, Israel's status as a Jewish state means that there are all these, Palestinian people who live in the land who actually don't have voting rights, don't have citizenship. And, Israel's constitution in this way basically requires there to be a large number of people in the land who are oppressed, who, in terms of the occupied territories, are often under military rule, don't have access to full civil rights, don't have passports, and also will always require Israel to exclude certain people from its borders if it's defined as a Jewish state. Mm-hmm. And that this doesn't have anything to do with opposing Jewish people. It just has to do with opposing a state formation that, is kind of anti-democratic at its core.
There's another criticism of the organization that I know that you've reported on quite a bit, and that's how they collect and present statistics on anti-Semitic incidents. And just tell me a little bit more about that briefly.
It's both related to the anti-Zionism criticism and also a little bit broader. Every year, the ADL does this audit of anti-Semitic incidents, and they kind of count up all the reports that they have been, that I've taken over the year of anti-Semitic incidents that have happened in different places. And then they put them all in a report and they count them. And then they say, this many happened this year, this many happened last year. That means there's an X% rise in anti-Semitism.
By any measure, 2019 was a devastating year for the Jewish community in New York. At the ADL, we tracked more than 300 anti-Semitic incidents, including acts of harassment, vandalism, and violence.
And often what they do is they, especially for the past few years, they've really used it to show that anti-Semitism is exploding all over the US. They said there's a this % rise. They said this is why we really have to be on guard.
Yeah, we know that social media is a super spreader of anti-Semitism and bigotry of all forms. And I think what we're seeing now, Becky, is it's just exploded. Events in the Middle East, polarization here in America, and as you said, 18 to 22%. Half of teenagers between 13 and 17 report having been harassed online. The numbers are staggering.
But if you look at the statistical methods, a lot of sociologists, et cetera, are actually quite critical because oftentimes the methodology will change year over year. For example, I think it was maybe from 2021 to 2022, they added a bunch of new partners who were bringing them data. So they had a bunch of new sources of data compared to the year before, but they were still reporting as if they could do an apples to apples comparison from the previous numbers. And then also just in general, it's like a pretty tough way to try to understand anti-Semitism because there's all different types of incidents that are lumped together in one report. So you say you've got a white nationalist handing out a flyer, plus somebody punching somebody and calling them a dirty Jew, plus somebody drawing a swastika on a wall. It's all just kind of lumped together in one report. So it can be really hard to tell what these different things mean. If some things might be more severe than others, how to understand them. And also, historically, the ADL has sometimes included anti-Zionism in these reports, which is obviously quite contested, as I talked about. And then actually since October 7th, 2023, they have started including basically anti-Israel rallies in their reports. So they've actually increased the statistics in that way.
Right.
And one of the reasons for the criticism is, it's not that it's necessarily wrong to try to measure anti-Semitism in American life, which is what they're doing, focused on the US. Statistics do show that there has probably been a rise in anti-Semitic incidents
and very high profile ones too. I'm thinking here in Canada, police are investigating fires at a synagogue in Montreal, Jewish school that has been shot at twice. Please continue.
There are studies that do show that when Israel is in the news and, there's news of Israel committing certain brutal actions, that often does tend to result in more violence against Jewish communities in the diaspora. So this is something that we're seeing, and it's not to trivialize it, but the way that the ADL does its audits seem often to kind of focus on being able to put out a press release, especially as an organization that relies on donations, needs a lot of support from people who are scared about anti-Semitism, but without really being able to break down the incidents in a clear way that really shows what's happening. And also these statistics are often used then to target the pro-Palestine movement. So, Greenblatt will be in one of his appearances and he'll say, well, anti-Semitism has increased this percent so that's why it's not okay for there to be a protest against Israel. And so even if they are capturing some real anti-Semitic incidents in the reports, then they're being used for this criticism of the pro-Palestine movement.
Mari, I'm so interested. How has all of this controversy borne out in this, 100-year-old organization? I know there's been reports of staffs quitting over what they see as ADL's pro-Israel advocacy.
Yes, it definitely has caused a lot of dissent within the organization. That's something that my colleague and I have reported on. You've seen some resignations, people leaving. Alex and I reported a year ago that 3 people had left since October 7th, over the course of fall 2023, just from the Center for Technology and Society, which does the social media stuff. And one of the more high profile things is that Yael Eisenstadt, who had come in, I think a year and a half before to lead that Center for Technology and Society and was kind of a big name in fighting online hate, she left because of Greenblatt praising Elon Musk. And she didn't say that publicly. She said she was just taking another opportunity. But we kind of heard from sources inside that it was over this disagreement. And for her, so for some of these people, it's not necessarily about the Israel-related advocacy. It's more about this idea of cozying up to Musk. But it's all a little bit connected in that I think for many people in the organization, there's a perception that when a college student is saying something about Israel, the ADL is going to go full turbo mode, calling them out, doing everything to stop them. And then when somebody like Elon Musk, richest man in the world, close associate with the president, is doing a Nazi salute, the ADL is going to say, oh, it's okay, take a deep breath, don't criticize him too much. Right. And there's a lot of disagreement with that within the organization.
Has Greenblatt and the ADL responded to all of these criticisms that they've been getting?
Publicly, no. I think, my understanding is that whenever there's a leak to the press, if for example, Jewish Currents publishes things from that employees have told us, or, Vice and the Daily Beast did some reporting last year, I think that there's a lot of, I think that they're really trying to stop those leaks and they really don't want people to talk to the press about it. So we know that they're concerned about getting this press. And then obviously we know, even before October 7th in 2022, when Greenblatt kind of announced a big policy change that the ADL would officially define anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism, there was a meeting where some employees were expressing dissent with that. We obtained the audio, and Greenblatt was very much like, well, you need to think about whether this is the right place for you. And if you don't agree with us about anti-Zionism, maybe you don't want to work here. So he obviously is kind of dismissing a lot of those concerns. And last year, also, he gave a speech at Brown University at one point, Greenblatt did, and he made a mention in there to, no matter what you hear from socialist magazines that very few Jews actually read, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And so it seemed like he was making a reference perhaps to us at Jewish Currents.
Yeah, as the socialist magazine. Yeah.
As a Jewish socialist magazine that has done a lot of reporting on him. And it seemed like he was basically saying, whatever they say, we don't agree with that, or that's not true. I think there's maybe sometimes when there's enough of an uproar, they'll do something. In fall 2022, Greenblatt went on TV, and it was after Musk had taken over Twitter, and Greenblatt, his staff had prepared talking points for him to talk about some of Musk's problematic history with racism. And instead, he praised Elon Musk as the Henry Ford of our time. And people thought that was really ironic because Henry Ford was a very well-known anti-Semite, but he was saying it in a positive sense. And I think at that point, there was enough backlash that Greenblatt apologized and said he had misspoke and Henry Ford was bad and whatever. But it's, most of the time, no, there isn't a response, and they definitely are not changing their policy direction.
Okay. Mari, just before you go, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I wonder if we could kind of end where we started with what we saw this week with Elon Musk and also the ADL's response. You are a Jewish person, and I just wonder what that's like for you to watch all of this play out.
I'm quite used to the ADL operating in this way after reporting on it for a while, so it's hard to be surprised. But I honestly think it's really disappointing. It's really disappointing to know that there's not an organization that can actually speak up about anti-Semitism in a clear way and can see how it operates when it actually is operating at high levels of power, and to say something about it. It just feels like there's a total void where this organization that's supposed to be the main organization fighting anti-Semitism just doesn't care as long as these people agree with their goals in Israel and are in power. And that feels pretty disappointing for me as a Jewish person, that this organization that's supposed to represent me is so acting in such a way that's so opposite in what I believe in terms of both my own safety and justice for other people. And I think it's really disappointing and really sad for me to see that, Jewish history and Jewish politics and Jewish subjectivity is being used in that way. So it's really heartbreaking.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so before we go today, a quick update. In the aftermath of all of the criticism that he's been facing, Elon took to the platform that he owns and posted a series of Nazi jokes. They're all one-liners, and I'm not going to repeat them, but Greenblatt replied, quote, "We've said it hundreds of times before, and we will say it again. The Holocaust was a singularly evil event, and it is inappropriate and offensive to make light of it. Elon Musk, the Holocaust is not a joke." Front Burner was produced this week by Ali Janes, Karen Outshorn, Lauren Donnelly, and Mackenzie Cameron. Sound design was by Sam McNulty and Marco Luciano. Music is by Joseph Shabison. Our senior producer is Elaine Chow. Our executive producer is Nick McKay-Blokos, and I'm Jamie Poisson. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for following us this week. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next week.